One of the most common issues is UI that looks designed for dribble, not for real users. For example, everything is white on white. Buttons look like cards, cards look like headers, headers look clickable, and nothing clearly says, hey, this is what you should do next. That was a great example I saw from Quiz Challenge app. The concept itself was simple. You either create a challenge or accept one. But users didn't get it. Why? Because the UI treated everything the same. Same colors, same weight, same visual importance. From distance, it looked like one diagram list of buttons. That's a hierarchy problem. If everything screams, nothing is heard. Good UI is about contrast, visual priority, clear separation between action, content, and navigation. At Eleken, this is usually the first thing we fix before touching any cool visuals. Another classic mistake is alignment and spacing. You might not notice it consciously, but users feel it instantly. Misaligned elements make the interface feel chaotic. Your brain has to work harder to scan the screen. And when scanning is hard, comprehension drops. Using a grid sounds boring, but it's what makes interfaces feel calm and predictable. We see this constantly in our work at Eleken. When we redesign confusing products, simply tightening the grid often makes the UI feel more usable even without changing features. That was the case with my interview. Instead of adding complexity, we focused on structured, aligned input screens with consistent grid layouts at high churn points in the candidate flow. The previous UI broke familiar patterns and felt unpredictable, which led to drop-offs. Once the layout became consistent, the experience felt calmer, form interactions were easier for both users and AI models to understand, and candidate completion rates improved. Confusing UI before and consistent come after. Then there's the too many actions at once problem. This shows up in a lot of early-stage products. Everything is visible, everything is clickable, and users don't know where to start. We see this constantly in dashboards and mobile apps. The intention is good, let's give users power, but power without guidance feels like chaos. Facebook is another confusing UI example. The platform is notoriously cluttered, and Ad Manager takes it to another level. New users don't know where to begin, and even experienced users get lost digging through layers of menus just to find single setting. It's powerful, sure, but it's also overwhelming. A better approach is progressive disclosure. Show the main action. Hide secondary actions in menus. Let users focus on one decision at a time. This doesn't make the product weaker, it makes it clearer. Now let's talk about big misconception. The UI is confusing because it's not developable. Most of the time, that's not true. Anything is technically possible. The real issue is the cost versus value. A smooth animation that takes 2 hours in After Effects might take days to implement properly in CSS and JavaScript. It might require extra libraries, more maintenance, and lead to more bugs. So teams choose simpler UI not because they are lazy, but because the fancy visuals don't always improve usability. And this is where many designs go wrong. They optimize for looking impressive instead of solving the actual user problem. UI is not art. It's problem solving. Games are a perfect example of this trade-off. You see a lot of feedback like the UI stylish but confusing, but busy menus, inconsistent buttons, controller input that change between screens. Users eventually adapt, but that doesn't mean the UI is good. It means humans are good at coping. Great UI doesn't rely on users getting used to it. It respects their time from the first interaction. Another underrated issue is consistency. Same action, different button. Same button, different result. This breaks trust and breaks experience. At Eleken, this is why we always start with flows before visuals. We map what users are trying to do, what they expect to happen, where confusion can appear. Only then we design the UI around that logic. And that's also why many smaller apps feel functional but not appealing. They solved the problem but didn't refine the experience. On the other hand, many flashy UIs refined the visuals but forgot the problem. The sweet spot is doing both. If you are a beginner and your UI feels confusing and boring, don't add more effects. Instead, you should remove ambiguity, improve hierarchy, clarify actions, simplify flows. Most ugly or confusing UIs don't need more creativity. They need better structure. Now I'm curious, what the most ridiculous UI you've seen that looked cool but completely fell apart in real use? Drop it in the comments. If this video was helpful, hit the like button and subscribe for more practical UI breakdowns, and I'll see you in the next one.